What kind of person screams at a stranger in a crowded coffee shop parking lot, oblivious to the pain they're causing? Emily Carter, a young Navy sailor, never expected to find out on a quiet Saturday evening. She just finished a grueling week at the naval base, her muscles aching from drills, her mind heavy with the weight of her team's latest mission briefing. All she wanted was a moment of peace, a chance to sip a latte and laugh with her teammate, Mia, who'd been her rock through months of training. The coffee shop, a cozy spot near the base, was supposed to be their sanctuary. But as Emily pushed open the glass door, the sharp screech of a woman's voice sliced through the air like a blade. "You're so rude. Yelling like that in public? Have some class." The words weren't aimed at Emily, not yet. They were directed at Jake, her fellow sailor, who stood rigid in the parking lot, his face flushed with a mix of fury and restraint. Emily's heart sank. She knew Jake. He didn't yell, not unless something was seriously wrong. Stepping outside, Emily saw the source of the chaos. A woman, heavy-set with a pinched expression, her arms flailing as she berated Jake. Her name, they'd later learn, was Karen. She wore a garish pink tracksuit, her hair pulled back so tightly it seemed to sharpen her scowl. The parking lot was crowded, cars idling, people glancing nervously from their windows, but Karen didn't care. She was a storm, her voice booming, accusing Jake of disrupting her peaceful evening. Emily's eyes darted to Mia, who stood behind Jake, her shoulders hunched, her face pale. Mia's hands trembled as she clutched her coffee cup, and Emily's stomach twisted. Something had happened before she arrived. Something bad. Jake's voice was low but firm. "Ma'am, I asked you to stop. You were out of line." Karen scoffed, her laugh sharp and mocking. "Out of line? Me? You're the one shouting like some thug. I'm just trying to enjoy my coffee." Emily pushed through the small crowd, her boots crunching on the gravel. "Jake, what's going on?" she asked, her voice steady despite the knot in her chest. Jake glanced at her, his jaw tight. "She was harassing Mia," he said, nodding toward their teammate. "Called her names, mocked her uniform. I told her to back off." Emily's gaze snapped to Karen, who rolled her eyes. "Oh, please," Karen sneered. "She's just sensitive. I said she shouldn't be parading around in that uniform if she can't handle a little critique." Emily's blood boiled. Mia was one of the kindest people she knew, a sailor who'd overcome a rough childhood to serve with pride. The idea of Somionianion belittling her for her service made Emily's fists clench. She stepped closer, her voice calm but cutting. "You don't get to talk to her like that. She's earned that uniform." Karen's eyes narrowed, her lips curling into a smirk. "Oh, another hero, huh? You military types are all the same, thinking you're above everyone else." The crowd murmured, some nodding in agreement, others shifting uncomfortably. Emily felt the weight of their stares, the judgment, but she held her ground. Mia's eyes met hers, filled with a quiet plea for help. The tension in the parking lot was suffocating, like the air before a storm. Karen's tirade didn't stop. She jabbed a finger at Jake, her voice rising. "You need to apologize to me. I'm a paying customer, and I deserve respect." Jake's restraint was fraying, his hands flexing at his sides. Emily knew he was trained to stay calm under pressure, but this was different. This wasn't a battlefield. It was a public shaming, and Karen was relentless. Emily stepped between them, her heart pounding. "Ma'am, you're the one causing a scene. Walk away." Karen's face reddened, her eyes blazing. "Don't you dare tell me what to do," she snapped, stepping closer, her bulk looming. Then came the twist that made Emily's heart lurch. A barista, a young woman in a green apron, emerged from the shop, her phone in hand. "I saw everything," she said, her voice shaking but clear. "I recorded it." She wasn't just insulting me as she grabbed her arm, tried to pull her away from the line. The crowd gasped, heads turning to Karen, whose smirk faltered for the first time. Emily's mind raced. Grabbing Mia? That wasn't just harassment, that was assault. She looked at Mia, who nodded slightly, her eyes brimming with tears. "She wouldn't let go," Mia whispered. Jake stepped in to stop her. Emily's anger surged, but she kept her voice steady. "You put your hands on her?" she asked Karen, her tone icy. Karen's bravado cracked, her eyes darting to the barista's phone. "That's not true," she sputtered. "She's lying. I barely touched her." But the crowd was shifting, their murmurs turning to whispers of disbelief. Jake's voice cut through. "You crossed a line, ma'am, and there's proof." The barista held up her phone. The video paused on a frame of Karen's hand on Mia's arm. Mia's face contorted in fear. Emily felt a surge of gratitude for the barista's courage. But the fight wasn't over. Karen's face twisted with fury, and she lunged toward the barista, shouting, "Give me that phone!" Emily moved instinctively, stepping in front of the barista. "Back off," she said, her voice a low growl. Karen froze, her eyes wide, as if realizing she'd gone too far. The crowd was silent now, the air thick with anticipation. Jake pulled out his phone, dialing the police. "We're done here," he said, his voice steady. Karen's face paled, her bravado crumbling as she stammered, "You can't do this. I didn't do anything wrong." But the truth was out, captured on video, witnessed by a dozen strangers. Emily looked at Mia, whose trembling had eased, replaced by a quiet resolve. The sailor in her was waking up, ready to face the storm. As the sound of sirens grew closer, Emily felt a mix of relief and dread. This wasn't just about Karen Anna Maria, it was about justice, about standing up for what was right. But the confrontation was far from over, and the stakes were higher than ever. The wail of sirens cut through the tense silence in the coffee shop parking lot, a sharp reminder that consequences were closing in. Emily stood firm, her eyes locked on Karen, whose earlier bravado had dissolved into a frantic scramble for control. The woman's hands shook as she pointed at the barista, her voice shrill. "You're making a mistake. That video's fake. I'm the victim here." But the crowd wasn't buying it. Their whispers had turned to murmurs of disapproval, their phones now out, capturing every moment of Karen's unraveling. Emily glanced at Mia, whose face was still pale but now held a flicker of strength. Jake, ever the protector, stood close to Mia, his phone still in hand, the call to the police complete. The barista, clutching her phone like a shield, stepped back toward the shop's entrance, her eyes wide but resolute. The police arrived, 2 officers stepping out of a cruiser, their faces calm but professional. Emily's heart raced as she explained the situation, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her. "This woman harassed my teammate, grabbed her arm, and caused a scene when we intervened," she said, gesturing to Mia. The barista nodded, offering her phone. "I have it on video," she said, her voice trembling but clear. Karen's face contorted, her eyes darting between the officers and the crowd. "They're lying," she shouted, her voice cracking. "I was just talking. They're blowing this out of proportion." But the officers weren't swayed. One took the barista's phone, watching the footage in silence, his expression hardening as Karen's actions played out on the screen. The second officer approached Karen, his tone calm but firm. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to come with us to answer some questions." Karen's eyes widened, her voice rising to a near scream. "Arrest me? For what? I'm a paying customer. I have rights." The irony wasn't lost on Emily. Rights? What about Mia's right to feel safe? What about the respect Karen demanded but refused to give? The crowd watched, some shaking their heads, others whispering words of support for Mia. Emily felt a surge of pride for her teammate, who stood taller now, her trembling gone. Mia's voice was soft but clear as she spoke to the officer. "She grabbed me, wouldn't let go. I was scared." The officer nodded, his notepad out, jotting down her statement. Karen's protests grew louder, her arms flailing as she tried to rally the crowd. "You see this? They're ganging up on me. This is unfair." But her words fell flat. The video was undeniable, and the barista's courage had turned the tide. Emily caught the barista's eye and mouthed a quiet "thank you." The young woman nodded, a small smile breaking through her nervousness. It was a moment of connection, a reminder that even in chaos, There were people willing to stand up for what was right. But Karen wasn't done. She turned to Jake, her voice dripping with venom. "This is your fault. You and your little friend. Playing victims." Jake's restraint snapped. "You don't get to play the victim here," he said, his voice low and fierce. "You attacked her, and we're not letting you twist this." The crowd murmured in agreement, and Emily felt a swell of gratitude for Jake's unwavering loyalty. The officer stepped in, one placing a hand on Karen's arm to guide her toward the cruiser. "Ma'am, let's go," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Karen yanked her arm away, her face red with fury. "Don't touch me. I'll sue you all." But her threats were hollow, and she knew it. The crowd parted as the officers led her to the car, her shouts echoing into the night. As the cruiser's lights faded, Emily turned to Mia, pulling her into a hug. "You okay?" she asked, her voice soft. Mia nodded, her eyes still wet but her jaw set. "I didn't expect that," she admitted. "But you and Jake, you had my back." Emily squeezed her shoulder. "Always." The barista approached, handing back her phone. "I'm Lauren," she said. "I couldn't just stand there and do nothing." Emily smiled, her heart warming. "You're a hero, Lauren." The three sailors and the barista stood together, a small alliance forged in the heat of the moment, their shared stand against injustice binding them. But the night wasn't over. The officers had taken Karen's information and promised to follow up. Emily knew this wasn't just about one outburst, it was about accountability. She pulled out her phone, contacting their base's legal officer. "We need to make sure this sticks," she told Jake and Mia. "She can't just walk away from this." Jake nodded, his eyes steely. "Agreed. Assault's serious. We've got the video, witnesses, everything." Mia hesitated, then spoke. "I want to press charges. Not for me, but for anyone else she might hurt." Emily's heart swelled with pride. Mia's courage was a quiet fire, burning brighter with every moment. As they left the coffee shop, the crowd dispersed, some offering nods of respect. Emily felt the weight of the night settling in, but also a spark of hope. They'd faced a storm and come out stronger. But the battle wasn't over. Karen's outburst had exposed a deeper truth, that entitlement could wound, but unity could heal. Emily knew the road ahead would be tough statements, legal proceedings, maybe even backlash. But as she looked at Mia and Jake, she felt ready. They were a team, and no one, not even Karen, could break that. The days following the coffee shop incident were a blur of statements, interviews, and quiet moments of doubt. Emily, Jake, and Mia met with the base's legal officer, a stern but fair woman named Captain Ruiz, who reviewed the video and witness accounts with a meticulous eye. "This is clear-cut assault," she said, her voice steady. "The video shows intent, and you've got multiple witnesses. We'll support Mia if she chooses to press charges." Mia, sitting across from Ruiz, took a deep breath. "I'm doing it," she said, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. Emily squeezed her hand under the table, proud of her friend's resolve. Jake leaned forward, his eyes fierce. "What about her? Will she try to spin this?" Ruiz's lips pressed into a thin line. "People like her often do, but the evidence is strong. Stay focused, and don't engage if she tries to provoke you." Karen didn't stay quiet. Within days, posts appeared on local social media, painting her as the victim of overzealous military kids who'd ganged up on her. Emily's stomach churned as she scrolled through the comments, some calling Mia weak, others accusing Jake of aggression. It was a twisted narrative, but it gained traction. Karen even gave an interview to a local blog, her voice tearful as she claimed she'd been humiliated and targeted. Emily wanted to scream, to flood the internet with the truth, but Ruiz's warning echoed in her mind. Don't engage. Let the evidence speak. Still, the lies stung, and Mia's confidence wavered. What if people believe her? She asked one night, her voice small. Emily hugged her tight. They won't. Not when the truth comes out. The court date arrived, a small hearing in a local courthouse that felt both ordinary and monumental. Emily, Jake, and Mia sat in the front row, their uniforms crisp, their faces composed. Lauren, the barista, was there too, her presence a quiet anchor. Karen entered, her pink tracksuit replaced by a conservative blazer, her expression a mask of wounded innocence. She avoided their eyes, but Emily saw the flicker of nervousness in her movements. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with sharp eyes, called the case. The prosecutor presented the video, Lauren's testimony, and statements from other witnesses. Each frame of Karen's actions, her grab, her sneer, her tirade played out in stark clarity. Emily watched Mia's face, seeing the pain resurface but also a growing strength. Karen's defense was flimsy. Her lawyer argued she'd been provoked and misunderstood, but the judge wasn't swayed. "Ma'am," she said, her voice cutting, "you physically engaged with the complainant and escalated a verbal dispute into assault. The evidence is clear." Karen's face crumpled, her earlier confidence gone. She mumbled an apology, but it felt hollow, a last-ditch effort to save face. The judge sentenced her to community service and a fine, with a restraining order to keep her away from Mia. It wasn't a long sentence, but it was justice hard-won and undeniable. Emily felt a weight lift, but the victory was bittersweet. The damage to Mia lingered, a wound not easily healed. As they left the courthouse, the sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the steps. Mia stopped, turning to Emily and Jake. "I was scared," she admitted. "Not just of her, but of what people would think. But you two, you made me feel like I could do this." Jake grinned, his usual stoicism breaking. "You did the hard part, Mia. We just had your back." Lauren joined them, her smile shy but warm. "I'm glad I spoke up," she said. "It felt right." Emily looked at the Group 3 sailors and a barista, strangers turned allies, and felt a surge of hope. They'd faced a storm and come out stronger, not just for themselves but for anyone who'd ever been silenced by entitlement. The aftermath wasn't easy. Karen's supporters faded, but the online vitriol left scars. Mia started therapy, supported by her team, and slowly reclaimed her confidence. Emily and Jake took turns checking in, their bond with Mia tighter than ever. Lauren became a friend, stopping by the base with coffee and stories, her courage a quiet inspiration. The coffee shop put up a sign, "Respect all who serve in uniform or apron." It was a small gesture, but it meant the world. Emily often thought back to that night, the moment Karen's anger met their resolve. It wasn't just about one woman's outburst, it was about standing up, speaking out, and refusing to let cruelty win. Years later, Emily would tell the story to new recruits, not as a tale of victory but as a reminder. Courage isn't loud or flashy. It's the quiet choice to protect, to stand firm, to lift each other up. Mia went on to lead her own team, her kindness a beacon. Jake became a mentor, his loyalty unwavering. And Emily? She carried the lesson forward, knowing that even in the face of chaos, a single act of bravery, whether from a sailor or a barista, held change everything. The world wasn't perfect, but it was better because they'd fought for it, together.